Welcome. Thank you very, very much for joining our series, A Glass with Our Growers. I'm absolutely delighted to have you here today, and I hope you have your lovely wines with you, because we're very lucky to be joined by the sisters, Elsa and Adèle Matrot, and we have...
Good evening. Hello.
Good evening. Would you like to introduce yourself so everyone knows who is who?
I'm Elsa, the youngest of the family. And I'm Adèle.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much. So I hope you have your wines in front of you. The format for this evening is we have 45 minutes. Hopefully you have 3 wines which are open and ready to go. This is a very relaxed session. We'd like you to have a glass now and start enjoying it, and then we'll taste the wines with the girls as we go. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A section, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'll get to them when we can and answer them. And that's about all for housekeeping, so we'll get started, I think. If we could kick off, we're so happy to be working with small family domains such as yourself. Would you mind talking everyone through the history, a rough potted history from 1835 up until today?
Now, the history of Domaine Matrot is, it started with our great-grandfather and our grandmother, and our great-grandmother, sorry, so the domain as we know it today. They were both coming from family with a vineyard. And so we know that our great-grandmother, grandparents were already producing grapes. And our great-grandfather was more a négociant, but he also owned vineyard. And the history why we are now in Meursault is because our great-grandmother was from Meursault, and her brother was supposed to take care of the estate of the winery. So he bought the house where we are now. And when First World War happened, he died after a few days. So they needed someone to take care of the farm, because it was, I mean, multicultural at this time. So they had beast and wine and cereals and so on. And so it's our great-grandfather and his wife who moved here to take care of the Matrot, of the family company. And then it became Matrot. But most of the vineyard from Meursault came from our great-grandmother. And after, our grandfather Pierre took over. So he bought a little bit more vineyard in Meursault and Montly, for example. And then our parents, our father joined, and then our mother. And they also bought more vineyard. And now it's us, Elsa and I. We joined about 10 years ago. And since 2016, we are in charge of the wine. And since 1918, we are in charge of everything. So now our parents are at home. And we work.
They're busy enjoying the wine and not worrying about all of the difficult things that you have to think about. Well, one day, hopefully, that will be you guys as well. But for now...
Next generation.
So you're the 6th generation. It's incredible, isn't it, I think?
And it's really a family estate, because today Domaine Matrot is 24 hectares, which is big for Burgundy. In Burgundy, the average is around 5. So it means it's because the estate has never been truly divided. Most of the vineyards stayed in the family company since the beginning. So and also each generation added a few vineyards. We added Maranges that we are going to taste later.
Perfect. And whereabouts are the majority of the vineyards around the Puligny area, or?
Yes, it's close to Meursault, because it was easier to work for, before we used to work with horse. So to get to the vineyards, to the vines, it was easier to have vineyards close to the Domaine to take back the grapes, etc. So most of the vineyards are in Meursault. We also own some vineyard in Puligny. Au Cédurès-Montly, which are two small villages very close, 3 kilometers far from Meursault. And the last vine that we purchased is Maranges, so it's the farthest vines that we own. But now as we have tractor, it's easier to get there.
Definitely. Otherwise, I think it would be a long time.
Yes, but like, it's a big deal. It's true that it's a big deal when we harvest because it takes a long time to get the grapes by tractor, to get the grapes in Meursault. And so we have to be very fast when we get the grapes, we sort, and then our dad needs to go back very quickly to the vine because it takes more than an hour to get there tractor. Yeah,
that's a long time. I think that thank goodness for modern technology though, eh? Otherwise it was a very long time indeed. I think you've worked with private cellar for a long time now. Do you
I can't remember the beginning.
Do you remember when you first started working with us and how you came to meet Nicola?
Our parents were already working with private cellar. I think when she started, I'm sure when she started private cellar, she worked with Matrot straight away. So she knows us since we are kids. Huh? We were learning in the Domaine when she came to taste with our parents. Huh? I'm sure she could maybe explain. I think so.
For a long time.
Oui.
It's fantastic. We love having these relationships, so it's great. So so there's been a few interesting vintages recently to keep you on your toes and make sure you're not relaxing too much. Would you mind, because we've just been releasing the 2021s in the UK, could you talk to us a little bit about this vintage? I know it was challenging, but there's some wonderful wines and lots of people who are interested to hear how you've made such a fabulous outcome.
21 for us is complicated and challenging, and it started very early because we had an early spring. March was very cool temperature, so we had bud break early, especially for the Chardonnay. And mid-April, we had a terrible night of frost with minus temperature until -7 in the coldest, and we had snow, which is completely unusual. And so all the bud has been burned by the frost, and we lost 80% of the crop during this night. And after this night, the vines took 1 month to recover. We were very worried because nothing happened, even it was cooler, and we could see the spring and flower in the apple tree or in other fruit trees. Vines didn't move, and after 1 month, we start to have a new bud break. So the second buds, and on this second buds, you have 1 grapes or no grapes. You have just the wood that is gonna make the next harvest.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very challenging. And then we had cold and rainy summer, so we had to be very careful with the disease, mildew and oidium, which is very bad for grapes. And mid-August, we had dry and hot temperature, so we could get a good maturity. But we started the 17th of September, which is very surprising because in 2020, we started the 17th of August.
Wow.
Voilà. This is the particularity of our job now, is the times of ripeness and the times for the vine is it can be 11 months or 13 months. So this is very challenging for us. At least to vinificate very small yields is complicated also with the tank, because we have big tanks. So it's complicated to manage, and to feel the vintage. We were quite worried when we vinificate. We didn't know what we will do. Our best. we try to make a round and easy red, not over extracted, to not have green tannins and dry tannins. And for the white, as we don't use new oak, we really want to show the vintage and the terroir. But it took a long time to have an expression of the terroir in the wine. You have to have a long aging in barrel to start to feel the different terroir, which is the most important for Adèle and I when we vinificate. We really want to show the variety of the terroir.
Well, I know when I think about Domaine Matrot, the three things I always think about are expression of terroir, purity of fruit, and also vintage. You want to be true to that vintage. You know, you're not wanting to create the same product every year.
No.
Because you can't, so that's good as well.
With three, it would be possible, but it's not very funny.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit because I think it's really interesting, and we can't ignore that the weather and the climate is changing. And as we taste the wines, we're going to be talking about the methods that you're using to work with those changes, and how you're producing such wonderful wines. But I'm sure that people are starting to get thirsty, so I think maybe we should pour the first wine. So the first wine you have is the Bourgogne Chardonnay. I'll hold it up here. 2020 vintage. Perhaps you wouldn't, I'm sorry, I know we're jumping around a bit, but could you just summarize 2020? Quite a different vintage, I think.
Very different vintage. Alors the vineyard started very early too. That's why we harvested also the 17th of August. But the spring was nice. Basically, it was an easy vintage. The only big problem we had was dryness during summer and very warm, very high temperature. So for Chardonnay, it's quite okay because Chardonnay is a resistant plant. But for Pinot Noir, it was more complicated because Pinot Noir is very fragile. And you can see when you open a map of the world, you can see all the places where Chardonnay can grow.
Yeah.
All the places where Pinot Noir can grow. The problem when you have such dryness and heat and sun.
Yeah, heat stress for
the Pinot Noir get rid of grapes, so you produce very low yield. And so the big challenge for 2020 was not so much the season, but more the end of the season with the date of harvest.
Okay.
Because, the vineyard was so thirsty that at some point it stopped the maturity. So you only get maturity by concentration. And that's the tricky part, because when you get concentration, of course, you get more sugar, but also you get more acidity, and you can have very balanced wine. And the funny story about our date of harvest is we were very worried and talking with a lot of friends. and we couldn't decide if we wanted to go early or not so early. And Elsa just had a baby in June, so I was alone doing the tasting the grape, and I was in the Volnay-Centenot. And when I arrived, so we came back from holidays.
It was the 14th.
The 14th or the 13th of August. So we were bottling and racking at this time. And when I arrived in Volnay-Centenot, I see wasp everywhere in the vineyard. So
Okay.
I called and I say, we have two problems. The first one is we will have to harvest very early in the morning unless the worker won't go in the vineyard because of wasp. And the second problem is I think it's ready because I'm not sure wasp like acidity. They are more into.
Okay.
So we decide to send an analysis of the grapes to the lab. And when it comes back, we look at the analysis and we see we can harvest. So we stop racking, we stop bottling, we call all our friends and the kids of our team, and we go harvest the next day.
Wow.
So not
Rock and roll.
Voilà.
Do you know, it is rock and roll though, and it's cool that you can be proactive and you can be agile like that because it's a you know, you're a family and it's small enough that you can just go, right, we're going, let's go.
We really didn't want to miss the date of harvest, which is the part that we can't miss if we want to have the wines that we like. With the date of harvest is the biggest point that we don't want to miss.
Absolutely. It's so, as some people say, it's the most important decision of the year, isn't it?
Right.
Okay, so what are we tasting here then? Could you explain?
Bourgogne Chardonnay, it's mostly grapes from Meursault, from bottom of Meursault. And also, since 20 vintage, we own a big vineyard in Haute-Côte, in the Maranges, and we declassify in the Bourgogne Chardonnay. So for the Bourgogne Chardonnay, we use our new oak barrel. En fait, in Domaine Matrot, the specificity is that we don't use new oak barrel in the village and in the cru. Only 1 to 3 years old or 1 to 5 years old.
Okay.
So what we do is after 5 years old, the barrel goes back in the Bourgogne Chardonnay. And when they are new, they go in the Bourgogne Chardonnay. So it's about 30% new oak. And but you can't really feel it because we take care of the oak before, so it doesn't smell new oak so much. And this allows us also to test all the new oak barrel during the élevage of the Bourgogne to decide in which cuvée it will go after. So like this, we know exactly each barrel of the domain. And so we do about 10 months élevage in barrel, and then about 2 months in tank, 1 to 2 months in tank, and then we bottle. We bottle just before harvest. Like most of the time, we finish bottling the Bourgogne, and 2 days later we start harvest.
Not much of a break there then.
No, mais we work once in a year.
I think it's delicious. The thing which really impresses me is the freshness, because it was a really hot vintage, and yet you don't feel it. The acidity is just really clean and crisp, but it's got, for me, it has lovely texture as well. How do you work on the body of the wine? What are you doing in the winery?
Non, je sais pas.
You're keeping it on the lees and.
The lees. We keep the wine on lees in barrel, and the exchange between the lees and the wine makes the texture of the wine. We don't do any bâtonnage.
Just let it sit naturally, and yeah.
On the lees and I think we get this texture also thanks to the maturity. You know, the alcohol, roundness in the wine. And then as we have natural acidity, we don't do any acidification. It's control to make sure we keep a good balance for a long time. And that's it. We don't do anything.
And these vines are not young vines either, are they? They're they're well established, aren't they?
Oui, they are around 35 to 50 years old.
And what do you think that adds to the complexity? You think it makes a difference, or?
Of course, we know that old vines, the roots are going down deep in the soil, and so we have better expression of terroir with old vine. Of course, we would love to have, but at some point you cannot have only old vine. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Time is very old. We have to take off to replace, because very old vine don't produce enough.
We try to have between 30 and 40 years old vineyard average for
Okay.
the old.
Okay.
You have new for the next generation. You have to think about the next generation, because if you pass the estate with only old vineyard, then the new one don't produce. The next one don't produce wine, because we know that old vineyard produce less. And if everything falls down at the same moment, the next generation is very complicated. And also it's very costly to replant, to take off, to replant, to wait for the 4 years to have.
Yeah.
So it's a cost that you have to share between generations.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the 30% idea is really interesting. And it shows your vision for longevity in the estate and how important it is to pass it on to the next generation, which is really great. I've got someone I think has raised a hand. Not sure if they want to, if you have a question, pop it in the chat or the Q&A. Hopefully it's working. If not, then do let us know. But we'll carry on. So the next wine that we have is the Saint-Romain. Now this, I just tasted the two wines next to each other, and it's quite remarkable. I think it's a really different expression of Chardonnay. Would it be possible you could talk us through this wine as well?
Alors Saint-Romain, it's a grape that we buy. It's not, we don't own the vineyard, but we know very well the guy who takes care of the vineyard, the vine grower. We choose the date of harvest, which is very important, and we harvest also.
How long have you worked with the grower?
Over 12 years.
Ouais, around. And alors we use a little bit of new oak in the Saint-Romain also, because Saint-Romain is a very sharp appellation. So it's without new oak, it would be too austere. And so that's why we prefer to give a little bit of roundness thanks to the new oak.
For those who don't know where it is, it's in the hills, isn't it? Just by Mercer, but it's a little bit higher up. So it's about 100.
It's on exposure also. We harvest. For example, when we start harvesting in Meursault, the 22nd of August, we finish our own vineyard around the 1st of September. We stop for almost a week, and then we go in Saint-Romain.
Okay. Oh wow! Wow.
It's very later than us.
It's high in altitude, and it's not the same exposition, and it's very limestoney soil. So
it's
the
very
wine
floral. The wine.
Yeah. So we do a longer élevage compared to Meursault, compared to Bourgogne. Sorry. Like, we do the same élevage as Meursault. So basically we press, we do 1 night in a tank. So the big, for the débourbage, which means we let the big sediment going down in the tank. And the next morning we pump the clean juice and the beautiful leaves into barrel. We barrel down. We don't keep the dirty part. And then we 12 months in a barrel. We rack just before harvest. And then we leave in tank until now, until January, beginning of February. We're going to bottle the Saint Romain 21 next week.
And
So,
the Meursault.
And the Meursault also.
And how many barrels do you normally make on average of the Saint Romain?
20.
Ouais.
20 average 20, ouais.
Yeah.
In 21 on 5.
I think it's brilliant. It's a really, really smart wine. For those people who have,
it's approachable. It's a little bit more complex than the Bourgogne Blanc because you have more texture and the length is and the length, but at the same time it's very easy and it's a wine for aperitif. You are with friends, you share a nice bottle of white wine. You don't have to think about it. It's like easy to drink.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really nice balance because it's serious and it means business, but at the same time, it is easy to drink. I can absolutely see that. If for those people who are doing some cooking afterwards and are wanting to pair some food with the Bourgogne Chardonnay and the Saint Romain, what would you guys eat at home with these two wines?
Maybe with Saint Romain, something a little bit spicy.
Un poulet au curry.
Ouais.
Chicken curry.
And
Bourgogne Blanc, for myself, I just open it with charcuterie. Something easy. Just to share a bottle of wine with friends and c'est apéritif wine more. Et Saint Romain, oui, something or maybe
or seafood also.
For
Saint Romain. Because it's not as rich, seafood doesn't work with rich wine. And Saint Romain, as you have the sharpness and acidity at the end, it goes well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would quite like it with something. This would be really decadent, but I'm thinking fish and chips because the acidity would be so great and with the batter. It's absolutely lovely stuff. Now I know that you believe and you follow a lot of organic principles, but not necessarily the certification. How does that work in the vineyard, and why do you believe that's important?
Alors first, we believe it's important because it's a family story. Our grandfather started to think about le labour. Comment on dit labour?
Pluff.
Ouais, pluffing the soil.
No pesticide, no
herbicide.
Okay.
And then he turned all the domain organic. So it took 2 years. So in 2000, all the domain was organic. And so when you are raised, by people who talk organic, of course you think
you trust
in organic, because we see that it's possible to have comment on dit, a normal crop. If the weather is okay, it's possible to have a normal crop with organic. So I mean, for us it's not easy, but the biggest part was made before us.
And we see the difference with the quality of the most. The most with the organic farm is so much.
So how is it different?
The balance,
balance in acidity.
The balance, the acidity is higher. The wines, I think they are aging very well. It's and you see it also. We work in vineyard, and when we spray, we don't want to have chemical on our hands. We don't want to smell and to have chemical around us. So for us, it was natural to continue organic. For children, for the soil, for everything, and even for the faune et flore, enfin, je sais pas comment on dit. The diversity of the small, of the
whole vineyard, yeah, everything.
The ladybug, everything, the bees, everything were around the.
And I think
vine.
also it changed because when we think organic, we have to remember how it was for our grandparents. Our grandparents, they were organic until chemical arrived on the market. And they were no life people. They were working full time, weekend, all the time, doing everything by hand. And it was really hard. So when chemical arrived, for them, it's like,
we
easier.
produce wine and it's easier.
Exactly. And so they can do something else than working. And also they can have a crop because before chemical, I mean, they didn't produce so much grapes. The quantity were very low. And so for this generation, going back to organic is for them, it could seem crazy.
Yeah.
But now we don't do everything by hand anymore. We have tractors. Yeah. Which helps quite a lot.
Absolutely. And there's technology is evolving all the time, which is helpful.
When you see the soil, when our grandparents, when they saw herbs on the soil in the vineyard, for them it was crazy because we have the chance to have it clean thanks to chemical. But now today it's finished. Everybody is okay to have soil that with grass and flowers.
Actually, one of the we've had a question which is around the vineyards of these two wines. Are they planted with kind of vegetables, flowers, grasses? What's around the vineyards?
Vineyard forest, Saint-Romain.
With Saint-Romain forest.
Saint-Romain, you have forest.
I think you might mean between the rows. So are you using cover crops?
No, we don't.
Okay.
No.
Keeping it clean. Okay, cool.
It's grass, but it's not, there is no other, comment on dit, agriculture, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And I suppose the other thing it makes sense to just to dwell on quickly is you're quite the oak regime and using less new oak is very significant, and it's playing a big part in your wines because the style in which you're making wines. Is that something that you want to continue, or do you think that you'll use less new oak still in the future, or are you happy where you are now?
No, on est bien là.
We are happy. We in 2021 we decided to use lower in the red, like we were around 30% in the premier cru, and I think that 20-25 maximum is enough. You know, it depends also of the vintage. When it's a very sunny vintage, the wines are bigger, with full-bodied, with big tannins. It can handle new oak more than a cold and light vintage. So it depends. It's between 20, 25, or some Saint-Romain. Our father used to use 50% of new oak in the Saint-Romain. Now we use 20, and we think it's enough.
Yeah. I think it's delicious.
we need a new oak because very old oak, very old barrels, we have to throw them away, and we have to recycle our barrels. So no, I think we think that we found our style.
I think it's definitely working for you as far as I'm concerned. So that's good news. Shall we taste the red?
Bien sûr.
So it seems appropriate that the last wine is one of your most recent additions. Can can you tell us what while people are starting to taste, why Maranges?
Maranges, it's our father who had the idea, because Maranges is colder compared to Meursault. We harvest Maranges after Saint-Romain, so it's almost 3 weeks after our first day in Meursault. And so Thierry, he thought it could be an interesting place in the future, with Meursault getting warmer, being able to produce fresh Pinot Noir in Maranges. And so he started to buy grapes first in 2009, I think, around 2009. And in 2012, we had the chance to buy a parcel, so we bought it. And no, in 16, on a acheté.
En 12.
En 12. No, 2012, sorry. In 2012, we bought. And as the vineyard was in a quite bad shape, so it took us a few years to do it the way we wanted. And I think since 17 vintage, we understand the area better. It's easier for us to vinificate because we have the grapes we want also, which helps. And I think the quality is higher since 1917. And it's a nice place. It's always very fruity wine. You have structure, but it's not so big. And you have acidity, which is cool.
Nice for Pinot Noir.
For Pinot Noir, acidity is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. Well, it's for those who don't know where it is, it's the southernmost appellation, isn't it?
Oui, 1000, oui.
And this is really interesting because it bringing it back full circle, it all comes into the conversation we were having at the beginning, which is about how you can mitigate these really hot vintages occasionally, and often being able to call on, you know, fruit which is coming from these cooler appellations, or it's sometimes blending it in, can be really useful. So is that what kind of tools do you use to try and handle hot vintages? What are you doing?
Definitely the date of harvest controls the yields is the biggest part, and then the date of harvest we 100% distem, and during the vinification we do it's completely classic vinification, so we only do pump over, we don't do punch down. And naturally, when you have low yields and good maturity, the extraction is very natural. And it's more like for you English people, it's more to have the tea, a pack of tea in the water. You leave it for 10 minutes, or how many minutes that you want, and then take it off, unless you have tannins or you have bitterness or some stuff like that. So it's the same with the wine. We leave the juice and the grapes and the berries. We do the extraction, and when we think that we have enough structure in the wine and color, we just rack, we press, and we barrel down. So it's just, I think the key is the quality of the fruit. If you have a nice fruit, you have nothing to do. Nothing to do. It's easy to say that, but it's quite natural to have to make wine fruity and easy to drink, digest, like fresh Pinot. Absolutely.
Well, I think you're right. With beautiful fruit, you have the ability to make beautiful wines, but it's very, very hard to make excellent wines with substandard fruit, or fruit which is a little bit less good, isn't it? And that definitely shows. I don't believe that you have nothing to do, though. I think you're still very busy, even when it's excellent fruit. So how about this wine then? What would you be enjoying eating with this What would you recommend?
Poultry, chicken, roasted chicken with vegetables because it's good. So some comment hiver je ne sais plus comment on dit. Winter vegetables, pardon. Something easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really
with a reduced sauce or something like that.
I think it's absolutely delicious. Thank you very, very much. I don't know if you have we've got a couple of minutes left. So this is a 2019 vintage. Very different vintage again. How did this compare to the 2020?
Alors, there are few similarities if we talk about the weather, because we also had a very dry and warm summer, and also very low yield. The yields in the Pinot Noir were almost the same, like around 25 hectoliters per hectare.
Okay. How does that compare to, for example, like your Bourgogne Chardonnay? What kind of yields would you get for that?
Alors, Bourgogne Chardonnay, we are around 55.
Wow. Okay.
We are allowed, if you take average, we are allowed to produce 50 average in the red. We try to have about 45 and 40 in the cru. So you imagine that 25 is not enough. It's missing. But so both are very concentrated and quite warm. But the 19 I like because it's very delicate. The tannins are refined and
it's very delicate. It seems very delicate.
Right, true. Less acidity in 19, I think, compared to 20. Both are very good vintages, to be honest. But the delicacy of 19 is cool.
So we've had another question, which is we've been talking about freshness tonight, and obviously freshness, acidity levels are very, very important. Other than buying different vineyards, for example, Maranges and etc. How are you going to keep wines fresh in a warming world?
Alors déjà, there are two things. There is the terroir, also the soil. We got freshness thanks to the limestone, which is why when you taste vintage like 03, which was really, really warm, you still have the sensation of acidity with this. And again, the date of harvest. We have to change. We can't think like our parents and grandparents when we think.
I was interested in what you said before we started. We were talking about the dates of harvest, and I know the Bourgogne Chardonnay was harvested so the week before the Saint-Romain. And this is, you notice, I know that it's a cooler vineyard, but you do notice a huge difference in the taste. I think it's a very important, and it's great that you are able to be agile. You're not having to wait for the date of when pickers can come. You can go and pick when you want to.
And also the lees are very important. Lees brings the freshness also.
So so keeping it on the lees is, you think, is bringing a kind of a creamy freshness too.
And for the reds, there are many people who start to work with a full bunch also to
keep freshness.
Keep freshness. I mean, 10 years ago, we were talking a lot about Burgundy changing the grape variety. I think we are not here right now. We have a few more years with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay.
Do you think, if you had the opportunity, that you would like to? And if so, what would you plant?
No, nothing. And Pinot Noir.
Forever.
Ah oui, non. We keep.
Well, that's brilliant dedication, and it is. I mean, it's easy to see why it's the.
Well, we can change rootstock before changing
Oui.
grape variety. We will change the rootstock to make sure the adaptation of the vine would be able to. You have Chardonnay in Israel and it works, but you have Chardonnay in California. It's very hot and it still works. So it's just
Some tweaking.
Well, it's true that you have irrigation in these countries. We are not. It's completely forbidden to irrigate in Burgundy. So this is but for now it's sometimes you cannot understand the plant how it can be resistant. Like 2022, it was so dry, it was so hot for many days, like more than a week with over 35 degrees. We have a machine who can get the sun burn, and it was like Israel sun.
Wow.
So it was very, very high. And we had a wonderful vintage with quantity. So old vine is the key also, because roots are going down in the soil. It's fresh in the soil and you have humidity. For the young vine, it's more complicated. There's a lot. But I'm sure until we are retired, we're gonna produce Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
Well, on that note, I think we better let you go and get back to your families so you can have some dinner. But thank you so much for joining me tonight and being part of this and letting us enjoy your delicious wines with you. And yeah, cheers everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a nice evening.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
And one more quick thing, sorry, is that
January.
it is what at the end of dry January. Yeah, good riddance. And finally, if you're needing to restock your cellar, we are going to be sending you a discount code. So if you want to buy any of the wines, then you can get a little bit of money off with them. So keep an eye on your emails. If you fall in love with something, then that will help. So thanks, cheers, and good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.